Listen, this might hurt a little, but it will heal you a lot. When he rejected you, he expected something: tears, begging, questions, closure. But what he didn't expect was your silence. And that silence is louder than any word you could have ever spoken. Let's break down why your silence is your greatest power. When a man rejects you, there's often an unspoken expectation sitting quietly behind his decision. He assumes that even if he walks away, a part of you will still reach out, still seek his attention, still try to prove your worth to him. That expectation feeds his ego. It reassures him that he still has power over your emotions, that he still holds a place in your mind, even after choosing not to hold a place in your life. And that's exactly why your silence hits so differently. When you don't respond, don't chase, don't question, and don't try to change his mind, you remove that invisible supply he was counting on. Suddenly, there's no validation coming from you, no emotional reaction, no reminder that he's still desired by you. That absence creates a gap he didn't prepare for. It disrupts the image he had in his head, the one where you're still attached, still available, still hoping. Silence creates a kind of discomfort that words never could. If you argued, he could justify his decision. If you begged, he could feel secure in his importance. If you kept showing up, he would never truly feel the impact of losing you. But when you disappear emotionally and mentally, you leave him alone with his own thoughts. And those thoughts start asking questions he can't easily answer. He begins to wonder why you didn't react the way he expected. He questions whether you valued him less than he thought, or if you've already started moving on. That shift is powerful, because now instead of feeling like the one in control, he starts to feel uncertain. The silence removes the comfort of knowing where he stands with you. Without your attention feeding his sense of importance, he's left to generate that feeling on his own. And it's not as easy as it seemed when you were there. Your silence doesn't just take away your presence. It takes away the emotional reassurance he subconsciously relied on. That's when the absence becomes loud, and the lack of your reaction becomes something he can't ignore. When you remain present after being rejected, even in small ways, you unintentionally soften the impact of his decision. Your messages, your attention, your availability, they all act like a cushion, protecting him from truly feeling what he chose to lose. He doesn't have to sit with the weight of his actions because you're still there, still accessible, still offering a version of yourself. But the moment you go silent, that cushion disappears. Now he has no distraction from the reality he created. There's no conversation to ease his thoughts, no reassurance from you to confirm that everything is still okay. He's left alone with the consequences of his choice, and that's where things start to shift. Silence forces him into a space of reflection, whether he wants it or not. Without your presence, he begins to notice what's missing. The little things you used to bring into his life, your energy, your attention, your consistency, suddenly aren't there anymore. And absence has a way of making people reevaluate what they once took for granted. What felt easy to walk away from starts to feel heavier when it's no longer within reach. Your silence also removes any chance for him to justify his decision through your reactions. If you argued or tried to convince him otherwise, he could defend his choice. If you stayed and accepted less, he could believe he made the right call. But when you say nothing, there's no external input to help him feel comfortable. He has to face his decision on his own terms. In that quiet space, doubt can begin to grow. He may start questioning whether he overlooked something valuable, whether he acted too quickly, or whether he misjudged your worth. The clarity he once felt can slowly turn into uncertainty simply because there's no longer a version of you around to make things easier for him. Silence doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't argue. It simply steps back and allows reality to unfold. And when reality unfolds without you in it, it often looks very different from what he expected. When you suddenly go quiet after being rejected, you interrupt the pattern he thought he understood. People get used to predictability, especially in emotional situations. He expected a reaction, something that would confirm your feelings and keep the connection alive in some form. But when that reaction never comes, it creates a gap in his understanding. And the human mind doesn't like gaps. It tries to fill them. That's where curiosity begins to take over. Your silence becomes a question mark in his mind. He starts replaying moments, conversations, your behavior, searching for clues he might have missed. He wonders why you didn't respond the way most people would. He questions whether you were more emotionally detached than he assumed, or if you've already shifted your focus elsewhere. The lack of answers keeps his thoughts circling back to you. Mystery has a unique kind of power. When everything is explained, interest fades quickly. But when something is left unresolved, it lingers. Your silence creates that unresolved feeling. It leaves him without closure, without a clear narrative to settle his thoughts. And because there's no clear ending, his mind keeps reopening the story. Trying to make sense of it, he may begin to check for signs of you, whether it's through social media, mutual connections, or simply hoping to hear from you. Not necessarily because he's ready to come back, but because he wants to understand what changed. The absence of your voice becomes more noticeable than your presence ever was, simply because it's unexpected. This curiosity can slowly turn into a deeper form of attention. The more he thinks about why you went silent, the more space you occupy in his mind. And unlike when you were available, this attention isn't something he can control or predict. It's driven by uncertainty. And uncertainty has a way of holding on longer than certainty ever could. Your silence doesn't give him answers. It gives him something far more powerful. Something to think about over and over again without resolution. When you choose silence after being rejected, you're doing something most people struggle to do. You're refusing to trade your dignity for attention. It's easy to react emotionally, to reach out, to ask for explanations or try to change someone's mind. Those reactions come from a place of wanting to be understood, wanting to be chosen. But silence sends a completely different message, one that doesn't need to be spoken out loud. It shows that you value yourself enough not to chase someone who has already decided to walk away. That kind of restraint isn't weakness, it's discipline. It means you're not allowing your emotions to push you into a position where you have to convince someone of your worth. Instead, you step back and let your absence speak for you. From his perspective, this is unexpected. He may have assumed that you would try to hold on, that you would make it easier for him to leave by still being emotionally available. But when you don't do that, it forces him to see you differently. You're no longer someone seeking approval. You're someone who already has it within yourself. Silence also sets a boundary without needing to explain it. It communicates that access to you is not guaranteed, and that once someone chooses to step out of your life, they don't get to keep the benefits of your presence. That boundary creates a sense of distance that feels real, not just temporary or emotional, but intentional. There's a quiet strength in not reacting, in not defending yourself, in not trying to prove anything. It shows that your self-worth isn't dependent on someone else's decision. And that kind of confidence tends to leave a lasting impression because it's rare. Most people reveal their value through words, but silence reveals it through action. In the absence of your effort, he's left to recognize that you didn't need to fight to keep him. You were willing to let go and keep your standards intact. That realization can shift how he sees you, not as someone who lost him, but as someone who chose not to lose themselves. The moment you stop reacting, everything begins to shift in a way he didn't anticipate. When you were still engaging, replying, explaining, showing emotion, he had a sense of control over the situation. He knew where you stood. He knew you were still emotionally invested, and that gave him a quiet advantage. But silence removes that advantage completely. Now he no longer has access to your thoughts or your feelings. He doesn't know if you're hurt, if you've moved on, or if you've completely detached. That uncertainty changes the dynamic. Instead of you wondering what he's doing, he starts wondering about you. Instead of you checking your phone, he becomes the one looking for signs, waiting for something that may never come. Control often comes from information and access, and your silence takes both away. Without updates from you, Without conversations to rely on, he's left in a position where he has to guess. And guessing creates tension. It keeps his mind active, searching for answers he can't easily find. At the same time, you begin to regain your own sense of stability. By not reacting, you're no longer tied to his behavior or his decisions. You're no longer adjusting your emotions based on what he does or doesn't do. That separation gives you clarity and strength, even if it doesn't feel like it at first. From his side, the shift can feel uncomfortable. He may have expected to move on easily, assuming you would remain emotionally available in some form. But when that access is gone, he has to face the reality that he can't reach you the same way anymore. That loss of access can feel more significant than he expected. What once felt like his choice now starts to feel like your decision, too. And when both people have equal distance, the balance of power changes. He's no longer in a position where he can come and go as he pleases without consequence. Your silence quietly establishes that if he stepped away, you're fully capable of doing the same. And that changes everything about how he experiences your absence. When you choose silence, you're not just stepping away from him, you're stepping back into yourself. After rejection, it's natural to feel pulled toward the person who walked away, to want answers or closure. But silence interrupts that cycle. It creates distance, and in that distance, something important begins to happen. You start to reconnect with your own energy instead of pouring it into someone who no longer chooses you. All the attention you once gave him now has somewhere else to go. Instead of overthinking his actions or waiting for his messages, you begin to focus on your own growth. That shift may feel uncomfortable at first because you're no longer distracted by him. But that discomfort is where healing starts. You begin to process things honestly, without interference, without mixed signals. Silence also protects your emotional space. It prevents you from reopening wounds every time he reaches out or every time you feel tempted to check on him. By not engaging, you give yourself the chance to stabilize, to regain control over your thoughts and emotions. You slowly stop reacting to what he did and start responding to what you need. As time passes, you begin to evolve. Your confidence rebuilds, not from external validation, but from how you handle yourself. You realize that you didn't lose your value just because someone couldn't see it. In fact, stepping away from someone who couldn't choose you becomes a form of self-respect that strengthens you, and growth changes your perspective. The version of you that once felt deeply affected by his rejection won't be the same version that emerges from this silence. You become more aware of your standards, more protective of your peace, and more selective about who gets access to you. While he may be thinking about what he lost, you're becoming someone entirely different, someone stronger, clearer, and less willing to settle for less than you deserve. Silence becomes less about making him feel something and more about allowing yourself to become everything you needed all along.